It turns out that when the virus broke out, the countryside was not spared, and overnight, a large number of villagers turned into walkers and attacked people everywhere, with fewer and fewer people surviving in the village. There was chaos again among those who survived. Looting everywhere. Murder. People were killing each other over money and jewelry, and food was not valued in the countryside as much as it was in the cities because of the large amount of storage in each family. Fewer and fewer people survived, and then Lauchi simply and a few surviving townspeople hid in their own homes, blocking the doors and not going out. A few days ago, a gang of robbers from outside came to the village and searched from house to house, killing anyone they saw and taking women and children. Later, when they arrived at Lauchi's house, Lauchi only had a cannon and a few swords he had built himself, but the other side was outnumbered and had guns, so the situation was very urgent. At this time, fortunately, Lauchi's family had stored a lot of explosives used in coal mining in the mines, so he temporarily made some bombs and drove the other side back.
I thought you guys were something dangerous.
I thought you were robbers too, old school. You scared me to death. Ha ha.
Didn't you say you only had one cannon? Then what's with the 54 in your hand?
Ha, that's the robber who got blown away. He picked it up off the ground. It's unloaded.
Let me see.
Okay, here you go.
I checked the gun, there was nothing wrong with it, it was indeed out of bullets, and remembering that we still had quite a few 54s, I suddenly had an idea.
Why don't you give me this gun?
It's okay. I have no use for it anyway.
After all, he is a classmate. I was so touched to see him give me 54 that I gave him 59, and old 7 was pleasantly surprised. Suddenly it occurred to me that there was Heibai lying there. Lighten up and talk.
Ouch. Well, you don't care about me.
We rushed to Heibai, whose right calf had been blown up and whose blood had soaked through his pants. I took my own black bear folding knife out of my pocket and cut open the Heibai's pants, ripping off the bottom half of the leg and exposing the wound. The blood was already almost coagulated, and with this tearing, the wound started bleeding again, but luckily it didn't hit an artery and the wound wasn't too deep, but it needed stitches. The medicines and first aid kits were in the cottage. I immediately carried Heibai and said goodbye to Lauchi and told him that I hoped we could unite to deal with the danger together, and he promised to turn around and discuss the matter before deciding. Saying goodbye to Lauchi, we hurried toward the fortress, and Lauchi, worried about our safety, sent us forward for a while and did not go back until we were almost close to the fortress. When we reached the fortress, the men who had remained inside had waited at the gate, placed the ladder, and we went in at once. Putting down the Heibai, without bothering to explain, I told the women to go and boil water, while Lao Xian and Matt stood guard around the area, and I opened the first aid kit and took out what I needed. I took out the needle holder, scissors, tweezers, suture needles, and other instruments and put them in a tray, poured some alcohol, lit it, and sterilized the instruments that way. The water was boiled, and a little salt was added to it to make a saline solution, which was left to cool slowly, and in the meantime I prepared bandages, cotton balls, syringes, sutures, and iodine vodka. The anesthetic is lidocaine hydrochloride, an infiltrative anesthetic, chosen because Lido generally does not need to be test sensitized and is easy to obtain. After the water cooled, I held a cotton ball with tweezers and repeatedly rinsed the wound with salt water. Fortunately, the wound was not deep, and quickly rinsed out the foreign matter inside the wound. After rinsing it out, the outer perimeter of the wound was wiped with an iodophore cotton ball, and then the wound was injected lidocaine around the periphery of the wound, at which point blood kept oozing out of the wound and could be dried with a cotton. The blood keeps oozing out of the wound at this time and can be dried with a cotton ball. The threaded suture needle is passed through the skin on one side of the wound with a needle holder. There is a resistance when piercing the skin, and an impulse when the resistance disappears, indicating penetration of the. When the resistance disappears, there will be an impulse, indicating that the skin has been penetrated. Then pierce the skin on the other side of the wound with the needle, release the needle holder, and hold the needle that has been removed from the other side of the exposed part of the needle, follow the curvature of the needle and pull it out. Then tie the thread on, leaving about a centimeter or so of thread and cutting it, and so on, with the thread facing one way for easy removal. Place a pad of iodized gauze over the stitched wound and cover the iodized gauze with another layer of larger gauze over the iodine gauze. Wrapped with a bandage, the bandage cannot be too tight easy edema, cannot be too loose easy to fall off. The end of the bandage can be fixed with tape. You can also put the head of the bandage. The end of the bandage can be fixed with tape, or the head of the bandage can be cut open and tied. To prevent infection, Heibai was given a double dose of antibiotics, 300 milligrams of roxithromycin, and the second dose returned to normal.
Don't be nervous. It's just a flesh wound. It'll be fine in a few days.
You're a bitch. Let me give you a demonstration. It's a pain in the ass.
I asked Heibai if he had ever gotten a tetanus shot before, because tetanus needs to be refrigerated, and obtaining usable tetanus antitoxin is nearly impossible in these conditions, and trauma is the most prone to tetanus infection.
I fell 3 months ago. I just hit it when I fell 3 months ago.
That's a relief.
I told Lao Xian's wife and my wife to stop all meat for everyone and pool it for the Heibai to eat, as those with traumatic injuries need to be nourished. I always have some nervousness in my heart, I don't know why, so I took the binoculars to the wall of the fortress and looked around. Maybe like the Walking Dead described in The Walking Dead are sensitive to sound, there are a lot more walkers in the village. I asked Matt how he found us, and he told me that he hadn't actually left us the whole time, it was just that we were on our bikes, so we were a little faster than him.
I'm so glad you're back.
After thinking about it, it's too difficult to survive alone. Seeing you all working hard these days in the fortress to building their new home, I decided to join in.
Matt saw the repaired 56 Impulse very envious, but also very regrettable, but embarrassed too. I told him that the guns were to be held by individuals and redistributed as needed, and were considered public property, so Matt didn't say anything. Looking at Matt, I suddenly remembered something. There was a man I knew in the village who specialized in firing cannons for funerals, and used to shoot freebies, pheasants and whatnot, and he might have a gun or something at home. It's not too late. Thinking of this, I hurriedly called out to Lao Xian and Matt to feel toward the village again. Matt had a bow and arrow, so I gave 54 to Lao Xian to use, and I also used 56, responsible for covering the two of them. The walkers were really much more numerous than before, and old Xian was in the lead, making it very powerful. Chop for a while, the old Xian tired, change Matt open road, the old Xian break, his hands are not general, a 18 chop, play like the wind. This more than a month of life trip looked to be not in vain. Finally came to that villager's house. Once we entered the yard, we hurriedly returned and stuck the door shut to prevent the walkers outside from coming in. There was a white bone in the yard against the side of the house, and some remnants of rotten flesh, emitting a foul odor, and the door of the house was open. We went into the house and it was a mess, no one and no walkers. We quickly rummaged up in the house. We had one goal in mind, gunpowder and cannons. With great effort, we finally found a lot of black fire in a plastic bucket of medicine and a few hand cannons, a couple of repeating cannons, some fuses and smashing gun paper, which were used when dead, very bulky and unattractive to the robbers. Seeing a large number of smashed cannon paper, I was shocked, decided that this person's home must have a cannon, then let the old Xian they carefully search again. When searching the bedroom, Matt sensed that something was wrong with the closet and called for old Hen to come over a piece to move it out of the way and check it out. The cabinet moved out of the way, and sure enough there was a hole in the wall, shallow but with quite a few things laid out in it. There were a few cannons and some semi-finished products of cannons inside. I was overjoyed and rushed to move these things with the two of them to the electric tricycle in the yard. The electric tricycle had very little electricity and barely rode a few hundred meters before it ran out of power, so we threw away the battery and pushed it along. while Lao Xian and Matt took turns shooting at the front and back of the motorized vehicle to kill the walkers that came up. We managed to get to the edge of the fortress, and the walkers, attracted by the gunfire, swarmed in, the more and more and more. After the ladder was set up, the stuff had to be unloaded and transported to the fortress using manpower because the tricycle was too wide to cross, so the fortress rushed out to grab the supplies while my son helped us block the walkers. Heibai came out as well, having made a walking stick out of a branch and set it on his arm, and stood beside the ladder, aiming across the room with his trebuchet. In order to conserve bullets, plus get to the fort and have support, we didn't use our guns and each used our own close-quarter weapons to deal with the walkers and cover the women as they grabbed supplies. After a while, the stuff was finished, and we retreated toward the fortress as we fought. Everyone has withdrawn to the fortress, and as soon as they turn around, they're ready to move the ladder off, but the walkers have already rushed the ladder. At this time, Heibai, who had been standing next to him, opened fire, and he was really skillful, saving this cannon for the most critical time. The cannons were so powerful that the head and a large chunk of the chest of the walker in front of them were almost blown away, followed by a second and third. Taking advantage of this, we pulled hard on the ladder, but there were a couple of walkers pressed against the other end of the ladder, and as soon as we pulled on the ladder, the end with the walkers pressed against it was erected underneath the fortress. The ladder could not be thrown, and we pulled it up with 7 hands and 8 feet, or else it would have been difficult to get out of the fortress. It's hard to get out of the fortress. Looking at the swarming walkers, we recoiled from the madness of what we had just done. After all these trials and tribulations, let's see if bringing back something is worth the risk. There were 2 old taxi-made cannons brought back, but the firing mechanism was different from the black and white ones, similar in appearance to the old-fashioned bolt-action machine guns, but only one shot could be fired, which in the north it is called a free gun. There is also a 6-barrel cannon. The first time I saw it, black and white, a little drumming, I figured it out. This cannon is similar to a revolver. Hit a shot to turn the barrel, you can continuously. This cannon is similar to a revolver. There are also some semi-finished cannons, and Black and White said that it would take less than 2 days to assemble them all. Assembled, at least 5 or 6 single-shot cannons can be rebuilt. There are also several cannons for funerals, which are a square iron plate with dozens of holes drilled into it. Eyes, with small holes connected at the bottom, ignited by gunpowder, firing dozens of rounds at a time, and loaded with lead bullets. Lead bullets, the power at close range is very scary, but it is too heavy to carry around. It is good for guarding the fortress. There are also 2 12-lane cannons, similar to the ancient 6-eyed cannons, which are also used in the countryside for funerals and are very common, and are also ignited with a cannon, which requires an open flame and is also too heavy. There is a lot of black powder, but just not many lead bullets. Heibai said that this is good to say. There are 2 electric bicycles on the walled village. The village electric car is also quite a lot. With the lead in the battery is very easy to make lead bullets. Consuming quite a lot of ammunition today and saving it for later, I told Heibai to hurry up and make guns out of loose parts and asked him to teach everyone how to use the cannons, which he happily agreed to do in a heartbeat. It was getting late, so I had the men polish and maintain their guns, ate a quick meal and rested. The first half of the night was my watch, and I stayed quiet with my binoculars by the wall of the fort. A month ago, somewhere in western Hunan, Shushui Middle School, the doors were closed. On campus,